This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's June 12th, 2026. On this day in 1963, President John F. Kennedy delivered a historic address to the American people. It was an evening speech on national television, just hours after the National Guard was required to help two black students safely enroll in classes at the University of Alabama. President Kennedy asked every American to, quote, stop and examine his conscience. He said frankly and clearly that racism and discrimination were problems affecting the entire country. He named it a moral crisis, and he said the time had come for the nation to fulfill its promise that everyone is created equal. A few hours later, one black man in Mississippi left a meeting of his local NAACP chapter. He'd almost walked all the way home when a bullet struck his back. Medgar Evers collapsed. His wife and children, who were still awake after watching the president's speech, rushed outside to help, but the injury was fatal. He died within the hour. The rifle used to kill Evers was quickly retrieved. Fingerprints found on the scope were sent to the FBI. They identified the prints as belonging to a known white supremacist who had been asking folks where Evers lived. Byron De La Beckwith was put on trial. The all-white jury failed to reach a verdict, so another trial was held. Once again, a hung jury. He was set free. In 1990, Evers' widow successfully petitioned local prosecutors to reopen the case. And in 1994, more than 30 years after Medgar Evers' murder, his killer was sentenced to life in prison. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context and backstory from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The death of Medgar Evers was one of those galvanizing events that gave everyone a sober reminder of just how much was truly at stake in the civil rights movement. Some people who could downplay the importance of equitable access to education were stopped in their tracks when a life was lost. It was one thing to do the mental gymnastics required to ignore the harm done when people are barred from spaces because of the color of their skin, or to shrug off the prejudicial tactics baked into the hurdles some states made you jump just to cast a ballot. They could convince themselves that a million everyday injustices were acceptable, but murder was another matter. Things shifted just a little, and after event exposed the darkest, most violent side of racism, enough people came to understand the necessity of change. The Civil Rights Act passed. The Voting Rights Act was signed into law. Those laws weren't magic wands that fixed everything, not by a long shot, but they moved the needle in the direction of fairness. One of those laws is the measure that was gutted by the recent Supreme Court ruling that opened the door to redistricting. And so the current battle over Tennessee's political maps is just another chapter in the same story that includes President Kennedy's speech and Medgar Evers' death. And as that new chapter continues to play out, a major player from back in the day becomes more and more central, the NAACP. This week there were a couple of developments in the lawsuits challenging Tennessee's congressional redistricting. As you may recall, 4 lawsuits were quickly filed in the week after the maps were adopted. The Tennessee Democratic Party has dropped its suit, but that move only came after other federal lawsuits were combined into one. So now there's a focus on a consolidated case with the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, and the NAACP as plaintiffs. And the latest action in that case is that the NAACP is asking the federal judicial panel in charge to temporarily block implementation of the maps while the case moves forward. This is a really big deal, whatever those judges decide. We have a congressional election in November. Right now, candidates are running in the redrawn districts. Local election commissions are working to shift over their systems. The wheels are moving. And just as a reminder, one of the primary arguments in this case is that the new maps violate the 14th and 15th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. The plaintiffs say the changes intentionally discriminate against black voters by diluting their power. The Republican supermajority that designed the map disputes that claim. They say the only factor they considered was gaining advantage for their party. Prior to this redistricting, Republicans had a reliable hold on 8 of the state's 9 congressional seats. It's been more than a decade since the last time the state sent more than 2 Democrats to D.C. On a state level, the advantage to their party is incremental at best, although it could make a difference in which party holds majority in the House of Representatives. To voters in Memphis, just as in Nashville a few years ago, the difference is much larger. And some lawmakers have indicated that they aren't done yet. When the legislature reconvenes in January, it now seems they'll be considering a reworking of the lines between state legislative districts. It's not clear which districts they would like to split up. Right now, the GOP controls 76% of the state House and 82% of the Senate seats. There would be little functional advantage to cutting down even further on the likelihood of Democrats winning legislative positions. They've already got the votes to pass pretty much anything they want. In just a few minutes, how Nashville In Harmony is breaking barriers. That's coming up after the newscast.
You've got a lot of things to keep track of. Work schedules, family activities, the ever-growing list of things you need to remember to do. Updating the credit card or banking information for your sustaining membership may have slipped your mind. With just 2 minutes of your time, you can update your payment information and check one more thing off your list. Peace of mind for you, funding for your public radio station. Go online to WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville held its first public hearing last night on a proposal to create new zoning laws for data centers. People stood in a line stretching outside the building for hours to speak in front of the Metro Planning Commission. Many spoke against a proposal to build a data center near the Nashville Zoo. Wilder, a 10-year-old from East Nashville, says he wants to protect the clouded leopards and other animals at the zoo.
When my mom told me someone was trying to build a data center near the zoo, I said, wait, why would they do that? That makes no sense. We don't need more technology or air, water, and noise pollution. We need peace, trees, and each other.
Adrienne Flannery Riley, who was there with Wilder, also spoke out. She was concerned about the data center proposed at Fisk University. She says the optics weren't good for a school supporting tech that could take jobs from graduates.
The smarter we make tech, such as AI, with our thoughts, the more our brains are harmed. Harvard reports that AI causes cognitive atrophy, shortened attention span, poor working memory, and decreased ability to critically think.
Nashville is currently weighing an ordinance to set definitions and conditions for data centers. The city's also considering a 5-month moratorium on new data center construction. Metro Council passed the measure on the first of third readings earlier this week. An association made up of the nation's largest finance tech firms is challenging a new Tennessee law in court. It's a measure that taxes international money transfers, like the ones immigrants use to send funds to family back in their home country. The Financial Technology Association represents companies like PayPal, Amazon Pay, and SoFi. Its suit, filed this week in Davidson County Chancery Court, hones in on the tax applying only to international transfers, not domestic ones. The filing calls that discriminatory. It says the law violates both the Commerce Clause and the Import-Export Clause of the United States Constitution, and it points out that tax would apply to a wide range of money transfers, including small businesses buying equipment, parents sending money to their children who are studying abroad, or churches supporting overseas missionaries. The filing asks the court for a speedy hearing and a temporary injunction to stop the law from going into effect before the case is closed. This is one of several bills passed during this year's immigration crackdown that have landed the state in court. Families of some undocumented children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities will soon face an unimaginable decision: withdrawal from life-sustaining treatment or potential deportation. That's what health advocates are saying in response to a letter issued to families who rely on a last resort public health insurance program from the Tennessee Department of Health. For decades, the Children's Special Services Program has served low-income children with diseases like cancer, spina bifida, and heart disease, regardless of immigration status. Kids rely on the program to get complex medical care, including feeding tubes, ventilators, wheelchairs, and in-school support. The Tennessee Lookout reports the state is notifying families of undocumented kids that if they continue receiving treatment through the program after June 30th, their information will be shared with state immigration authorities who collaborate with ICE. The letter cites a state law requiring verification of immigration status for access to state benefits. That law only applies if applicants are 18 or older. Katie Richards, the president and CEO of Siloam Health, tells the Lookout, quote, "For some of these children, loss of life is not a hyperbolic outcome in this scenario." The Tennessee Department of Health has not responded to requests for comment. Orphans in state custody will soon be able to receive federal survivor benefits. That reverses a Tennessee policy that had been confiscating those funds for years. The change was facilitated by First Lady Melania Trump, who launched the program yesterday. The Tennessean reports that for the past 7 years, officials have taken tens of millions in Social Security payments, intended for some 750 orphans in state care. Some of that went towards the kids' care, and millions that were not used went back to the Social Security Administration. The First Lady announced a new type of account that would safeguard survivor benefits for the orphans in state care. Tennessee is one of 23 states that will set up such accounts. The move comes months after federal officials told Tennessee to change its policy, saying confiscating orphans' survivor benefits went against the children's best interests. Knox County has reversed its decision to remove the book Roots from school libraries. It was among more than 100 titles taken off the shelves because their content was considered inappropriate. WPLN's Camelia Burris tells us the book is considered culturally and historically significant.
Alex Haley's Roots is about the horrors of the slave trade in America. It chronicles the life and legacy of Kunta Kinte, who was forced from his home in Gambia into slavery. And 2 years ago, Governor Bill Lee designated Roots as an official state book. Journalist and author Lucas Johnson says that Roots sparks conversations between students and helps them understand the impact of slavery.
They can see how horrific hatred is and the horrors, just like the Holocaust. It should always continually be talked about because of the atrocity that happened, and so that doesn't happen again.
Johnson's new book, Remembering Roots, includes stories about the impact of Haley's work. And one of his favorites is about a 12-year-old boy who visited the Alex Haley Museum. He was so moved that he wanted to give the museum curator a gift, but all he had was gum.
And so the curator to this day, that was about 3 years ago, he still has that stick of gum in his drawer because he wanted to remember just the power of oral history and just the impact it had on this young man, talking about roots.
Roots is back on the shelves. It was removed temporarily because a section depicting the rape of an enslaved woman was said to violate the state's Age-Appropriate Materials Act. But people say the law is vague and subjective. At a recent school board meeting, Sherry Garrett, the head of Moms for Liberty, said that the law was not intended to remove books like Roots because it does not promote abuse, but rather shows the cruelty of slavery.
There's a major difference between exploitative sexual content and historically significant literature that tells the truth about a difficult part of history.
The Knox School Board is now asking that the law be revised so that the same standard of appropriateness does not apply to all grade levels. They also want books reviewed in their entirety and not just based on single passages. And they want more time for review. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Earlier this week, WPLN brought you the story of kudzu and the efforts to rein in the aggressive vine. That includes deploying bands of goats to munch on it. Now, Kentucky wildlife officials say a year-long study suggests herbicide-spraying drones could become an effective new weapon. Officials used drones to treat 93 acres of kudzu across 6 counties last year. Biologists returned this spring and found many of the dense infestations had been reduced to scattered patches. The drones proved highly efficient since they're able to treat steep terrain that would have been difficult to reach using traditional methods. Private Lands Program biologist Daniel Skinner says the treated areas have already seen a return of many native plant and wildlife species.
These sections that we've went to, we've seen them full of wildlife. Not only just native plants coming back up, but we're finding snakes and we're finding chipmunks and squirrels and songbirds and white-tailed deer and turkey, and everything's in these sections and still utilizing these areas. So
officials say the next phase of the project will focus on expanding access to drone treatments and helping more landowners control kudzu before it spreads across additional habitat. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Country music has been having a major pop culture moment. But that doesn't mean it's ideal material for choral groups who are trained to sing without any sort of regional accent. Nor is it an obvious fit for an LGBTQ plus choir with a mission of social change. And yet, Nashville In Harmony's upcoming concert will celebrate country songs that push against mainstream boundaries. Senior music writer Julie Height has the story.
A recent Nashville In Harmony rehearsal buzzed with the group members' enthusiasm about their upcoming concert.
For the June 14 concert.
The excitement was a relief to Wesley King, the artistic director of the LGBTQ+ chorus. He'd worried about how they'd take the news that their next program would focus on country music.
There's a reason why I didn't tell them the theme until after the season had started, because I knew if I'd said it's country, there'd be people that'd be like, oh, well, I'm not going to do it.
For one thing, singing country material can be a stylistic stretch for those accustomed to more formal fare, like group member Charlotte Varnum.
I come from a classical musical training, and so I went to school for music, and I think about it more technically than anything most of the time. And my fear with doing popular music in a choral setting is always that it's going to come across as hokey or glee club, show choir kind of feeling, you know.
Then there's country music's lingering associations with whiteness and heteronormativity.
For a while there, we started to have more representation of Black and brown artists, of LGBTQ artists.
That's King again. He's reflecting on a relatively brief period when the country music industry seemed to make an effort to diversify.
They're still there. They're still trying to make their careers happen, but they're not getting near the amount of attention that they were making some progress on a couple years ago.
King understands why the chorus members might feel alienated from the country music mainstream.
I want them to, instead of like exit the conversation, I want them to put themselves in the conversation.
While they learned strikingly complex choral arrangements of popular country songs like the Little Big Town ballad Girl Crush, he invited them to talk about the meaning the music holds for them. Here's Varnum again.
When that song came out, I was not out yet, but I love that song. That song is so purely a longing, pining song, and I feel like that is such a universal queer experience. Is just because most often, like in our developing years, whether you know it or not, you're yearning for this thing that on some level, most of us understand is not going to be an easy choice or something we cannot have.
Yeah, 'cause maybe then you'd want me just as much. I've got a girl crush.
That wasn't the only interpretation of Girl Crush they discussed. Nashville In Harmony member Allie Veach recalls a trans woman in the group sharing that, to her, the song captured the desire to outwardly embody femininity.
Putting it in this kind of lens is very much a reclaiming of this is still music that is ours. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but we're obviously singing Follow Your Arrow. It's so poignant, and it was not received by country radio because of two very specific lines.
Make lots of noise, kiss lots of boys, or kiss lots of girls, if that's something you're into. When straight and narrow gets a little too straight, roll up the joint, or don't. Just follow your arrow wherever it points.
Back when Casey Musgraves released that subtly affirming single, it signaled possibility to Veach.
I think back to like when I first moved here and I was understanding what country could look like. And I remember hearing that song and being like, oh, okay.
Songs by Garth Brooks, The Chicks, and Beyonce are also on the bill.
This ain't Texas, woo! Ain't no hold 'em. Hey, lay your cards down, 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 down.
King deliberately selected a pair of special guests who aren't yet household names, Lauren Michael Sellers and Brent Snyder. Both bring insight into what it's like working at country careers as openly queer artists. Country stardom has been Snyder's lifelong dream. He set it aside for half a decade when he came out at the age of 25, but country music is such a part of him that he returned to performing, and after hearing that other out country singers and allies call Nashville home, he made the move himself.
So I think there was a little bit of that signaling of like, I think I'm safe. It's still really scary to rip the mask off and like be authentically who you are in a place 500 miles away from home. where you don't know anybody, and I grew up in a no stoplight town in a single white trailer.
Snyder's life in Nashville isn't much more glamorous. He still lives in a tiny structure behind another musician's house, and that's after years of networking, hustling for gigs, refining his songcraft, and cutting independent recordings in his rippling tenor. The invitation to perform with Nashville In Harmony brings welcome recognition. It's also Snyder's first opportunity to give one of his songs the choral treatment. The group will sing on Michigan, a brand new ballad examining wounds caused by conditional love and acceptance.
Pretending you still love me, but we all know the truth.
He'll also sing an original about his evolving relationship to his ambitions.
I've come out of a season in the last couple of months where, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know how much longer I would be here on Earth, period. I thought my career's over, things just aren't happening, I can't afford to stay here. And luckily, I started writing and getting myself out of it through that. Now that I'm here, I'm like, some of the worst rejections and failures are already past me. Let's just move on and be resilient.
I know this road is far from home. This yellow brick dream goes on and on, but I swear it's less about the way and more about the getting there.
At Nashville In Harmony's That Ain't Country show this Sunday, Snyder, Sellers, and the choir will share their stories. King, their director, also wrote short essays about the significance of the popular country songs they're singing and the mainstream barriers they challenged, so the audience will have plenty to take in.
I hope they have a great time, but I hope that it leaves them wondering like, oh yeah, why haven't I noticed this before? Or why did I know these stories?
For Nashville Public Radio, I'm Julie Height.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nash Villager newsletter too. To get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.